877 career blocks, 9 seasons leading the league in rejections, the highest blocks per game average in WNBA history. Margo Dydek, a 7'2" Polish center drafted #1 overall, became the greatest shot blocker women's basketball has ever seen. Yet the league she dominated practically forgot she existed. The reasons why say more about the sport than they ever did about her. Warsaw, 1974. In a city still rebuilding itself, a child was born who would one day tower over the world's game, literally and figuratively. Margo Dydek entered life already marked by extraordinary lineage. Her father, standing 6'7", and her mother, 6'3", had both played basketball in the Polish leagues. The Dydek home was a place where height was ordinary, and the language of sport was spoken daily. But it wasn't just size that set them apart. Margot's older sister, Marta, also carved out her own career on the court, proving that in this family, ambition matched stature. From a young age, Margot's world stretched far beyond the boundaries of Warsaw's concrete playgrounds. By her teenage years, she was already approaching her full height, 7'2", a number that would become both her calling card and her legacy. Yet she was never just the tallest girl in the gym. She was a prodigy of languages, moving easily between Polish, English, Spanish, French, and even German. Coaches and teachers alike marveled at how she seemed to belong everywhere and nowhere all at once. Her early basketball days began with youth clubs in Warsaw, where she played against boys and girls several years older, learning to use her reach not just as a weapon, but as a shield. On those cold Polish mornings, as the city's trams rattled past, Margo and her sister would lace up their sneakers and chase a future that few could even imagine, one that would take Margo from the cracked courts of Poland to the highest peaks of the women's game. In that household, greatness was never just a dream. It was a daily expectation, quietly passed down from parent to child, sister to sister. And for Margo, it was only the beginning. In 1998, the WNBA was still finding its place in the American sports world. On draft night, every camera and every scout's gaze locked onto a single name, Margo Dydek. At 7'2", she wasn't just the tallest player the league had ever seen. She was a phenomenon, a riddle, and a promise all at once. When the Utah Stars selected her with the first overall pick, the moment carried the weight of history. Never before had a woman of her size, skill, and global pedigree entered the league's spotlight. League officials spoke in measured tones about her potential, but behind the scenes, anticipation ran wild. How would American basketball handle a presence that rewrote the geometry of the game? The Stars Z, a franchise searching for identity, saw in Dydek not just a franchise player, but a living, breathing outlier. A center who could swat shots into the stands and speak 5 languages in the locker room. Reporters rushed to capture her first steps onto U.S. soil, marveling at the sight of her ducking through doorways, hands swallowing the ball whole. Expectations soared. The league, still young and hungry for stars, hoped she would become a face of the future, a bridge between continents, a headline for every highlight reel. For Dydek, the #1 pick wasn't just a draft slot. It was an invitation to prove that greatness could come from anywhere, in any form. But as her journey began under the bright lights of Utah, no one could have guessed just how quickly her legend would be built, and how quietly it would fade from memory. In Europe, Margo Dydek's name meant something different. In Poland, she was the heart of championship dynasties. Her arms were the gatekeepers of 9 national titles, and her presence was a guarantee that the paint belonged to Warsaw. Spanish crowds, too, learned to trust in the inevitability of her impact. With Rose Casares Valencia, she anchored 4 league championships, collecting trophies as if they were a natural extension of her reach. Each spring, as banners rose in Krakow and Valencia, Dydek stood at the center of it all, sometimes smiling, sometimes stone-faced, but always unmistakable. European club basketball, with its fevered rivalries and packed gymnasiums, gave her a stage where dominance was measured in silverware. Coaches built their defenses around her. Opponents adjusted game plans, hoping to survive a night in her shadow. In EuroLeague women, Dydek's block totals became folklore. Her 7 rejections in a semifinal against Ekaterinburg are still whispered about in tournament circles. Teammates from Spain to Italy called her the anchor, the steady force that turned hope into hardware. recognition followed, not just in headlines but through institutional memory. In 2022, the International Basketball Federation enshrined her in the FIBA Hall of Fame. That honor, reserved for the rarest legends, placed her alongside the greatest to ever play the game. Yet even here, the applause echoed loudest in Europe. In Warsaw, in Valencia, and in the pages of FIBA's official record, Margo Dydek's legacy is not just preserved. It is celebrated, engraved in the history of a continent that never forgot her greatness. A record can be measured. A legacy, it turns out, cannot. In the years that followed Margo Dydek's last game, the numbers remained: 877 career blocks, 9 seasons leading the league in rejections, the highest blocks per game average in WNBA history. Yet, the noise around her name faded, quietly and almost mathematically. A search through LexisNexis, the industry's gold standard for media tracking, returns only 13 long-form stories about Dydek in U.S. outlets from the entirety of her career. Not a single major magazine cover. 38 times her name was mentioned during regular season broadcasts, never as the headline, never as the story. Compare that to the offensive icons of her era. Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Swoops, both American-born, appeared on more than 100 magazine pages each, their faces gracing 6 and 4 national covers respectively. Their games were dissected in primetime specials, their highlights looped in pre-game montages. Even in the league's official broadcast logs, Dydek's presence is mostly statistical, her blocks counted, her impact noted only in passing, rarely celebrated. The calendar split did her no favors. Each year she spent months overseas playing for European clubs during the WNBA offseason. This double life, Poland in winter, Utah or San Antonio in summer, meant she was never rooted in a single city's memory. Marketing departments, hungry for familiar stories and homegrown stars, rarely built campaigns around a Polish center who spoke in 5 languages and blocked more shots than anyone in league history. The numbers tell a story of erasure. They reveal a system that prizes scoring over defense, offense over presence, and domestic narrative over international greatness. For Margo Dydek, the gap between what she did and what was remembered is not just a footnote. It is the evidence. Brisbane, May 2011. Far from the roaring crowds of Warsaw and Valencia, Margo Dydek was living a quieter life, coaching, raising her young sons, and awaiting the arrival of a 3rd child. On the morning of May 20th, she collapsed at home. Paramedics rushed her to the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital, where doctors fought to stabilize her. For 7 days, she remained in a coma, her towering frame now fragile, her family and the basketball world suspended in hope and dread. On May 27th, at just 37 years old, Margo Dydek was pronounced dead. She left behind her husband, 2 sons, and the unborn child she would never meet. News of her passing rippled from Australia to Poland, from old teammates to rivals who remembered her as both a gentle giant and a relentless competitor. In the silence that followed, the enormity of her loss settled in, a life that had stretched across continents, cut short in a moment that no one could have imagined. The numbers still stand, towering and untouchable. 877 blocks. No one in the history of the WNBA has come close. For 9 seasons, Margo Dydek led the league in blocked shots, an iron gate in the paint that no one could force open. Her career average, 2.72 blocks per game, remains the highest ever recorded. These are not just impressive tallies, they are outliers, records that have survived waves of new stars and changing styles. Each time a young center chases a block record, Dydek's name is the shadow they cannot escape. Her 9-year reign as the league's block leader is a streak so dominant it feels almost impossible, the kind of record that belongs in myth rather than in a forgotten column of a stat sheet. Yet, for all her statistical greatness, her story is still missing from the highlight reels. Her name rarely spoken when the league's legends are listed. The numbers endure, silent and unbreakable, demanding to be remembered. Margo Dydek still holds records no one dares touch: 877 blocks, a triple-double built on denial, global championships, and fluency in 5 languages. Yet her legend fades in silence. In a world rewriting basketball history, erasure isn't just oversight, it is injustice, greatness. This immense should never vanish. What will we remember?